Today, I'm explaining exactly how I learn languages strategically, culturally, and in a way that simulates immersion, and why it all matters to me beyond just vocabulary. I want to share with you how I always get this compliment, which is
You sound just like a native speaker.
whenever I really put my mind to learning a language. Stay tuned. My name is Ashanti, also known as ShantiOni. I'm a linguist, a meteorologist, a climatologist, and a world traveler, as well as a singer and a dancer. And on this channel, I share my journey back to self through science, nature, travel, and intentional living. I've studied Hebrew formally, learning how to read, write, and speak Hebrew in under a year. I resonate deeply with Spanish speaking communities, especially the ones in the Caribbean. I'm currently learning Portuguese as we speak. In my native language, English, I explore different dialects and Creoles as well. Eventually, I hope to learn Creole, which is a francophone derivative language spoken throughout the Caribbean, as well as Yoruba, the language of my Nigerian heritage, as well as some other African languages like Swahili, which is spoken across much of the Eastern African region. For me, I find language to be strategic as it allows me to connect with the African diaspora. But here's how I actually learn. I find it very helpful to create an immersive environment as much as possible, even if I'm not able to be in that country. And I do this by watching kids shows, but also watching the news so that I get a wide spectrum of levels of vocabulary. I absolutely dive into the music, finding artists that I really resonate with. I follow a lot of social media content. I read up on the history of that language. I try to read books. I also practice writing in small ways, whether it's just on social media or actually writing out my thoughts. And then when nobody's looking, I either talk to myself out loud to practice, the accent and getting accustomed to the way that the language sounds or the way it feels on my lips. And then if I'm in public, I practice translating my thoughts into that language instead of actually talking to myself out loud. Which, you know what, sometimes I do that anyway because who's going to beat my ass? Exactly. But the ultimate goal is to simulate what it would be like living in that language as best as possible. What I would say though is very important in grasping a language is understanding how your own works and the foundations really of any language, which is understanding the grammar. You always have nouns, you always have verbs, you have the past tense, the present tense, and then a bunch of other tenses in between. If you don't understand how language works structurally and just as a concept, it will be a lot more difficult to grasp another one outside of your own. When you're learning a language, it's important to follow your authentic interests too. So, as I was mentioning before, finding your favorite artists and authors, TV shows, friends, and communities. And this is a real big one, learning the culture and the history. And in doing all this, your interests kind of become your own personal curriculum. And how cool is that? But what you're doing here is creating a root system where the vocabulary and the grammar that you learn can have fertile ground. One thing I see a lot of language learners get caught up on is pattern recognition. Pattern recognition can be good and bad if you aren't aware of how you use it. So, for instance, especially between the romantic languages, there are a lot of similarities, and you can use that to guide you. As I'm learning Portuguese, I use my Spanish knowledge to inform a lot of things. But on the contrary, sometimes these patterns don't actually exist between languages. Some structures and things in languages are unique to that language, and that's it. For instance, as a native English speaker learning Hebrew, there might not be a lot of translations or things and concepts that exist in one or the other. And that's fine. All you got to do is clear your mind and think about fine dining and breathing.
Fine dining and breathing.
When I was learning Hebrew, the students would always ask the teachers, Lama, which means why. And the teachers would respond, Kacha, and that means because. And sometimes it really just be like that. Essentially, you want to become like a baby, like a sponge, with no fear of making mistakes because you're just learning. When I was learning Hebrew, I would research the different Black communities that you can find in Israel. When I'm practicing my Spanish or learning more, because there's always something to learn, I'm doing it through my interests in the Black communities across Latin America. As I'm learning Portuguese, I find Rio, Bahia, Salvador very interesting because of their prominent Black communities. And for all of these languages, I'm looking into the cuisines. I'm trying to figure out what foods would appeal to me most. I'm trying them. I'm paying attention to the different dialects based on the regions. I'm looking up dances and trying to do them myself. I'm listening to music. And ultimately, I'm searching for some type of cultural connection because that's really what's going to make it feel deeper and more rooted for you. I don't limit my language learning to just foreign languages. Speaking English and the various dialects, or at least understanding them, allows me to connect with people across the Caribbean as well as Africa. Speaking Spanish, I can speak to people in the Caribbean and this one little country in Africa called Guinea Equatorial or Equatorial Guinea. Portuguese allows me to connect with people in Brazil, but also numerous countries across Africa like Mozambique, Cape Verde, Guinea Bissau, Sao Tome and Principe. Hebrew allows me to talk to people, well, right, in Israel. And to be quite frank, I don't use that language quite as much as I used to in the past because it's a small country and not many people I encounter on a daily basis are speaking Hebrew. And then Yoruba and Swahili open up even more doors across Africa. Ultimately, language is access. So at the end of the day, babes, I'm just like a sponge, and I really hope that I never lose that curiosity because curiosity is the real superpower. And it's cute. Let me know down below what are your favorite tips and tricks for language learning. Until later, ciao.